Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest is Ian Kaufman, the president of the Lakehead University Student Union.
It's a mouthful.
Oh my gosh. So, Ian, we were talking about a number of things that the student union does, and you were talking about advocacy as one of the big areas, really trying to represent the membership, your 9,000 dues-paying members, students.
Yeah.
So one thing you were talking to me about earlier was tuition. And I know this has been an issue for some years, both as a parent and from watching the news. It's been getting more and more expensive for people to pay tuition. So what's going on there? What are you guys doing on that front?
Well, so I think it's a perennial issue, like you mentioned. I think a lot of people have seen it come up kind of every year for a long time. We're moving into the 10th straight year of tuition fee increases and in Ontario. And when we say tuition fee increases, we mean beyond the rate of inflation, usually significantly so. So yeah, Lakehead, if it increases tuition fees for next year, it will be 10 straight years. And that's following a 2-year tuition fee freeze with more increases before that. So we've seen, tuition fees more than double in the last few decades. We've seen the contribution that students are making overall to universities' budgets more than double. So, back in the 80s, students paid about 20% of a university's operating budget, and the government made up almost all of the rest. And now we're seeing students are paying about 50%, and the government's paying less than 50%. So there's been a big transformation, and I think that's worth keeping in mind that, you hear students coming every year, and it's not necessarily the 1-year increase. It's identifying a trend that we feel is unsustainable in order to maintain, access to our systems of post-secondary education and not place too many burdens on students. So we see a lot of students, using our food bank that we run. Usage has more than tripled in the last 4 or 5 years. Student debt is skyrocketing, students' ability to purchase houses and start families. So these are all kind of questions that are tied in, and I think, it kind of comes up every year and we hear the same thing, and we're hoping to, start a bigger conversation about the long-term viability of our post-secondary education system in Ontario.
So these kind of numbers, in terms of where the government is providing the funding, in many sectors, we're seeing increased user fees,
right? Basically.
Yeah. To me, that it creates a number of larger conversations. Yeah. These are some of the impacts, I guess, of government after government after government running on a platform of tax cuts.
Yeah.
So those costs don't go away. They're now coming out of the pocket of the students.
Absolutely.
Are you able to make progress on this? Is this just an issue you're looking at in terms of tuition, or is there a larger issue? How do you frame this?
Yeah, it's absolutely a larger issue, and I think bringing up the tax cuts thing it's a big thing. I mean, a lot of the increases to tuition fees, I think, are very much related to cuts to the corporate taxes that Ontario charges. I mean, Ontario reduced its corporate taxes to be, we're one of the lowest jurisdictions in North America. I think Alabama or something is one of the only other jurisdictions in North America that has a lower corporate tax rate than Ontario, and that cuts into revenue for the government, and it doesn't allow them to properly fund social programs, including universities.
So we're down in there with Alabama, are we?
It's not necessarily a proud company, I think, in terms of that policy, right? So I don't think you can talk about tuition fees in isolation. It's a question of, we like to say it's not a student issue, it's a societal issue, and I think a lot of the time it gets talked about as, students are complaining about tuition fees again. But who are students, right? We're not a class of people. We move through these institutions and then we carry on that debt or whatever lost opportunities we had from paying for school into the rest of our lives. And like I mentioned, there's been some studies from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives that students, after they graduate, are having to delay having families and buy houses. And there's a lot of negative impacts. So it is a societal issue. It's an issue for parents when they're, having to forego other things that they could potentially use their money for or go into debt to send students to school. So yeah, and we don't think it's an effective use of money either. It's a drag on our economy, in our opinion. Yeah.
So thinking about other models, On one hand, it's like the user pay model is, okay, you're getting the service. We're not even analyzing how it fits into the larger society, you pay.
Yeah.
The other thing you were telling me about that you do is you have an arrangement with bus passes and with
Right.
Thunder Bay Transit. How does that work?
Yeah, so that's one of the services we offer to kind of increase access to university and reduce some of the burdens on our members from high tuition fees. So the Transit Pass is a partnership with City of Thunder Bay, and it's, I think, one of the coolest things we do. So students get what we call a universal bus pass on their student card for under $100 every year, and it lasts them the full 12 months. And for a lot of students, that makes a huge difference in being able to afford attending school and getting back and forth and all that stuff. So that's a deal we've been able to work out with the city based on, a kind of collective purchasing power.
Well, my guess would be it's not only that, but it's also a recognition on the city's behalf that the issue is not just transit. That in fact, by supporting the university, by supporting the students, there are a number of other gains that accrue to the city, that were some of which we were talking about earlier. So just, when we think about different models, and I'm seeing that it's the municipalities, in our case, our city, which is really the lowest level of government, has the least amount of resources, is the ones that are having to come up with innovative ways to really continue to provide services, to build livable communities, and are looking for those different models. So here's an example, rather than saying, we're going to squeeze every penny out of you, as it seems like it's doing with tuition fees, they're saying, hey, look, we're all in this together. You're contributing in a number of ways, and we're going to make this easier for you to continue contributing.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty happy with, students' relationship with the City of Thunder Bay is quite good. They've been very welcoming to international students. We have a great deal with transit. When we brought up political issues, some of the things we've talked about in the past are around the city being proactive on climate change and environmental issues, more active transportation routes for biking, because a lot of students bike because they can't afford cars, or they choose to. All those things, the city's been very responsive to, and we got very involved with the municipal election recently as well. So, I think the City of Thunder Bay has been real positive.
So, for people that are watching the show, who now want to plug in, want to get more folks from the university involved in the community activities, how can they get a hold of you? What do they do?
Sure. So hopefully we'll have our website and some contact information up. They can visit lusu.ca to get in touch with us. Whether you're an individual who's passionate about a cause, we can often work with people. If you're a business owner who wants to work with us to promote your business, we do that as well. I would get in touch, visit our website, give us a phone call. We're pretty plugged in and we get back to people. So we're always happy to work with the community. For sure.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest. We're just about out of time. I want to remind folks our next show, I think the next one coming up is with the mayor of Atikokan, Dennis Brown, is going to be a guest. If you have any questions for Dennis, please check us out on Facebook and write them there. Any ideas for the show, we're always welcome. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.